Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today's show is brought to you by my friends at Infinite Off-Road. Infinite Off-Road has a list of products that are covered by the best warranty on the market. A 25-year, you break it, we replace it, and it even covers accidental damage. All of that warranty is on the following items: high output light bars and pods, rock lights, whips, wheel rings, accessory power controllers, UTV mirrors and grills, both with built-in lighting. They strive to create the best product on the market at an affordable price backed by the best warranty on the market. Some things about the rock lights actually is they have the first red, green, blue, white rock light on the market, and that each light includes a dedicated pure white emitter rather than mixing colors to create white. They have 2 times the emitters, and the output of the competitors give the brightest output, richest colors, and widest patterns. Bluetooth controller with a handheld remote for additional control options. Heavy-duty aluminum case with a side wire design eliminates the need for an adapter or spacing puck. Modular kits also allow for the below plug-and-play components, allowing customization rather than a one-size-fits-all. And those options are 4 and 8 watt rock light pods. I don't know what I'm doing there. It's getting a little choked up on my words. Dome light with a built-in switch, HD flex strips, and 1 foot all the way up to 5 feet options. And it's red, green, blue whips, plugs directly into the rock light controller. And that's it for those. But one thing I do want to point out for everybody is, if you don't mind, go on Instagram or Facebook or the Apple Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, whatever you're listening on, whatever you want to know how to keep up with us. Go follow us, go like us, go subscribe. We are hosting a contest on our Facebook right now. On the Facebook, if you go sign up for our newsletter, it should be at the top of our Facebook page. You fill in your email and your first name. We're getting basically swag, t-shirts, stickers, parts from all the drivers throughout the entire season. We're going to build this big box of parts up. So when you enter your name, you actually get entered in that contest to win all of the stuff that we're going to give away at the very end of the race season. At the Southern Rock Racing Series finals for the entire year, when the race season is over, we're going to give that away to one of those people who has signed up on our website. Again, go to facebook.com/racingontherocks, and you'll find the contest entry form. Just fill the information out, and it'll also get you together for all the information you need to know about the podcast. Perfect. So all of that out of the way. Today is a continuation of the Hubert Rowland interview. The first part of the podcast was great. He had a lot of really good stories and a lot of great things to hear from. Today we're going to talk about rigs, King of Hammers, and just some really kick-ass stuff. So without further ado, we're going to just jump right back in.
Get a drink and gather round. Let's talk drivers. Let's talk rigs. Let's talk skill. You've got the best of the best in the off-road racing world. Have a seat at the table with us, and let's talk about racing on the rocks.
And get people more and more involved, and people having fun. That's kind of where we're going with everything so far.
Yeah.
And we just got back from King of the Hammers about 2 weeks ago.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. So before we talk about actual King of Hammers, I want to talk about kind of the rigs you've had and the rigs that you've gotten to race. So anyone that follows you on social media knows that you have had some of the most unique and really impressive rigs built for you. It's funny, actually last year I was working in a retail store, and I got a chance to stream King of the Hammers, and I actually videotaped you coming down back door, and I just remember thinking to myself, man, that's got to be just a crazy experience, and how does someone get there? But before we go there, let's talk about the rigs that you have. Something I want to bring up is you have raced in a bunch of different organizations, a bunch of different races. The first one I wanted to talk about was you did Terracross racing, right?
Yeah, that was my initial start in UTV racing.
Yeah, so tell me, for those who aren't familiar, what is the actual Terracross? Is it short course, long course? What are we looking at?
So Terracross was, it is no more. It got dissolved out.
Okay.
And then it got bought out. And they may bring it back later. I don't know.
Sure.
But Terracross, it went on for years. It was more kind of based around TV. Mm-hmm. It was filmed.
Okay.
And it was on, TV. They had a section block, whether it was NBC Sports or
Yeah.
Fuel or whatever the different stations were at the time. Terracross races were built within established events, like Heydays in Minnesota.
Okay.
Huge snowmobile swap meet, basically.
Right, yeah.
But it's off-road snowmobile swap meet is what it is.
Sure.
So Heydays, they bring in about between 30 and 50,000 people.
Yeah.
In a weekend.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's a big swap meet. They'll have like a little concert. They have a little bit of everything, and they would put in Terracross within that event. Mm-hmm. And I helped build the course a couple times when I was racing it. Mm-hmm. And that course, like I say, was a little more built for TV. It was kind of rough and tough, logs, rocks, kind of kicky little jumps. That racing was all about keeping the machine together.
Okay.
Because carnage is what makes good TV.
Absolutely.
So therefore, we built the course to make carnage.
Yeah.
So the smarter drivers usually did better, and then there's a lot of drivers that just had that wing it and make it happen. Those are the ones that made the good TV.
There you go.
That's kind of what Terracross was.
Sure.
And I did that that was my first UTV race ever.
Okay.
And
Tell me about so you raced a 1000 XP.
Yeah, we raced 1000. That was before the turbos come out.
So this is before the turbos. What was was it a stock chassis?
Yes. So Terracross they were stock machines.
Okay.
So Terracross was laid out to where you paid so much per race, and everything was provided. Okay. To whether you paid it or you had a partnering company pay it, so they can be on the side of the car or whatever, kind of like NASCAR racing or whatever.
Right. Absolutely.
So everything was provided. So you just had to get there, your hotel, your food, stuff like that. But they provided you a machine.
Wow.
There was mechanics there. There was
really
parts
cool.
there. But anything you broke, you had to pay for also. So you're not paying for the mechanics, but you had to pay for axles or a wheel or whatever. And it was all on discounted.
Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad though.
It wasn't incredibly bad. Sure. But at the same time, you are racing stock machines, which are great. Yeah. But they have their weak points, like we said earlier.
Absolutely.
So you have to be conscious of that because there's many people that would break out right away because they come from UTVs that were built stronger.
Yeah, you just step in the gas and burn your belt up right off the gate.
So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And it was fun because it was kind of like a spec racing. Everybody's doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The only thing that was different was your stickers.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. I won a championship in that in 2017. Jolene did very well in it. Okay. I guess we were the only two out of Nitro that actually got to go and do it. Everyone else was just swamped and busy, and it is what it is. But that was my initial start in Terracross.
Okay. So my next question is, and you can be a little bit more specific. It's the machine for action figures too. What race did you race this in? It's the 45-25 machine.
So that is a 2-seat turbo razor.
Okay, this is the 2-seat turbo.
That's sitting in my shop here. Okay. I initially built that for, kind of whatever type of racing. And last year, I'd raced some woods races in it a little bit.
This is 2018?
No, like 17 and 16.
Okay, 17, 16.
So very into 16, 17. So we kind of built that around racing with wide open designs, built a chromoly cage, we pulled the radiator to the back, put Super ATV, heavier arms, stronger axles. We have Sandcraft drive shaft, their steering brace, a lot of stronger things. That thing, all the stuff that kind of guarantee that gets you to the end, as long as you're just not cartwheeling off the side of a mountain. Yeah, so, you should be fine.
And also, all of these pictures can be seen on Hubert's Instagram, or if you do any kind of research on Google, you can find all the rigs that we're going to talk about. So this is one of those rigs that you made that, you upgraded one thing and you told yourself, I've got to make it to the end. So this is a rig that is completely built.
Yeah, we built everything in this one. It's all bolt-on stuff. Okay. I mean, you can buy any of the stuff that I have. From the same companies. Like I say, Super ATV is all the arms and the axles, a wide open design, their cage. We do have a custom radiator pushed to the back just to keep it out of the dirt. But it's all just bolt-on stuff. Sandcraft drive shaft and steering brace. We have better parts through Sandcraft in the front diff. A lot of better things. Yeah. And it just makes it where you can drive a little bit harder and you know it's not going to fail. Yeah. But there still is a balance of driving it too hard. Yeah. And it's not because of part failure. It's just there's a difference between abuse and driving it hard.
Yes.
So you can run into a wall wide open, and of course it's going to break.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you can maneuver around or over that wall and be there just as fast.
Absolutely. So something I'm looking at is what kind of tires do you run on here?
So the tires we run right now are a company called System 3.
Okay.
They're a newer tire company. They've only been out for a year. Wheels and tires through System 3.
Okay.
And they are through Dragonfire.
Yeah.
Or Tucker.
Okay. I had Dragonfire harnesses in my buggy for a long time.
Yeah, I run Dragonfire harnesses and seats and steering wheels. I run their stuff. Dragonfire's actually they're rated one of the most comfortable seats you can buy.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense for riding a long distance.
Man, I'll tell you, I had some seats from a brand that I won't name in my I had a Rock Bouncer Razor for a while, and they were some metal frame seats with basically like leather slip on with a little bit of padding. You want to talk about uncomfortable, man? I'd get in there and we'd do long distance riding, and it'd be 8 hours in that thing, and I'd get out and feel like I have a broken back. So that's one investment. If you haven't already made that investment, a good set of seats, and what we're going to talk about next is the best investment. And that next topic is suspension. I see you've got it looks like a complete rebuild kit on that unit. Talk about your shocks, your springs, things like that.
So we run full Fox shocks.
Full Fox shocks. So what's the difference between full Fox shocks versus what comes on, say, the 1000s come with Walker Evans, and the turbos come with Fox shocks. Outside of the dynamics, those silver turbo shocks. What's the difference?
So we deal with Fox like directly, slightly discounted, whatever. I deal with Fox as far as like you can take a stock shock and make it act like these, but it's just having to do a lot of work to the internals of it.
Right.
And I let them do it. Like I can rebuild shocks,
and
do valves, shim stacks, and all that kind of stuff. If I have a spec sheet on what to put in it, but it's sometimes just better to let people that know what they're doing do it.
Hey, there's something to be said for
that.
So,
like on most of my machines, we run the Fox RC2 shocks, which is
those are excellent shocks.
That shock is it's a conventional style shock. It's got a valve in it with a shim stack, and that's it.
Yeah.
And the oil pushes through the valve stack with different stages, and it gets stiffer in different stages, and it reacts differently. Of course, we run the proper spring rates according to what the machine weighs.
Right. That's a huge thing that I hear people talk about is, one to upgrade their springs, and it doesn't seem that there's a one size fits all. The ride from Polaris right out of the gate, it's pretty good on a stock machine. It's pretty good. But being able to talk with a shock provider and say, hey, I run this on the front end, I've got a huge winch, or I like to carry a full-size spare and all my tools in the back, those factors make a gigantic difference in the ride of your vehicle. And getting with a reputable shock manufacturer, spring manufacturer, that conversation, if you guys are looking for that information, that conversation should be had of what are the attachments I run, and a lot of those companies out there will give you the exact spring package you need, and based on what type of riding you do as well.
I tell people that on the daily.
Right.
I mean, people, a large percentage will happily spend money on bling.
Yeah.
Sound bars, light bars.
I need some rock lights.
The cool looking stuff.
You're right.
The damn $300 Yeti.
Yep.
Stuff like that. But when you'll say, well, why don't you spend some money on springs? And they look at you like kind of silly. Well, it's got springs on it. Well, yes, it does. I said, but what I've been telling people numerous times over the years is a Polaris Razor or a Can-Am or any machine, they're designed with the springs on them as they come from the factory, as the machine is.
Right.
So if you add a roof, a light bar, a sound bar, even harnesses, seats, a toolbox, that's all weight outside of what was calculated on that spring package from factory. So a machine is designed for as it comes with 180 pound riders. That's what that machine is designed for from the factory. So anything over that, whether it's 5 pounds or 200 pounds, you're changing the reaction from the springs, and you're changing the spring rate. So when we order in shocks, or when we send in shocks, or when we order a spring package or whatever, we know what the machine weighs.
Right.
Because the calculation of the fuel and the person, that's kind of irrelevant. That's kind of a given.
Right.
But we always know what the machine's going to weigh, and we'll tell them that, and they can give us the proper spring package for that weight of a machine. And so we'll get the spring package, and then we run crossover rings and stuff like that,
right.
which a crossover ring is a ring that's threaded on the shock body. It doesn't come from the factory, but that ring, you can adjust where it is, and that's what engages the second spring.
Right.
Your top spring is normally what accepts the little bumps, the little chatter, the little rocks, little
known
things
as the
like
tender
that.
spring.
Yeah, the tender spring. So you put a crossover ring inside that tender spring, and you can adjust it to where you can make the secondary spring engage faster.
Right.
Almost every time it's engaged faster, because some springs, a factory tender spring, it doesn't engage the bottom spring until it's fully collapsed, which is called a coil bind.
Right.
And some springs aren't designed to coil bind. If you coil bind them overly and overly and overly again and again, they end up collapsing and staying down.
Right.
So you take that crossover ring to kind of prevent that, and it also helps on the bigger jumps and bumps and whatever else they're doing. So there's a lot more goes into suspension, and I'm sure what you have, I can explain it all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
there's a lot to be said with that. There's numerous companies that offer spring packages, sole spring packages. On like the ones we race and we on the ones that we race and we jump and stuff like that, we're doing full shock setups.
Right.
And they're changing the internals and the valve stack and stuff like that to accept what we're going to do. When you're sending a world record jump, of course you need the springs to carry the machine, but you need the valving to be stiff enough to where it won't just bottom like crazy when it actually takes the hit. It'll actually take it to where it's supposed to take it.
And one of the main things I always hear is people who trail ride, they get a bad ride or this or that, or they jump their vehicle. One of the main factors that a lot of people don't think about is actually the wheel and tire that you run too. Actually, when you unload those springs, there's a rate at which the spring and the shock is actually unloading, which gets changed by the wheel and tire you're running. So just about everything you do on your vehicle will affect the suspension, how it works, and things like that. Again, all those manufacturers that Hubert mentioned, they all take that information into account as well. So the suspension is very, very, very particular. But to get back off the suspension and talk a little bit more about that unit, what did you build the TriStar 2-seater turbo rig that you got? What did you build that specifically for? I know you'd mentioned general racing, but did you actually race this in anything in particular?
I kind of built it around just general racing in itself, where I can kind of adapt it to whatever according to whatever needed. I actually raced King of the Hammers in that machine last year.
Very nice.
And that was my first time racing King of the Hammers. My first time riding in the desert. Period.
Yeah.
And after King of the Hammers, I went and raced UTV World Championships in that one, as far as on the short course end of it. And to go back King of the Hammers last year, like I said, was my first time. I knew it was a rough race, and I come from here in the east, and we climb rocks and hills and things like that. And I'm thinking can't be no worse than this. Well, King of the Hammers is they're trying to make it the hardest one-day race.
Right.
It is in the country right now.
Right.
They're trying to make it in the world, and they're pushing on it. The sole reason it's so hard is because there's a time limit on it.
Sure.
We're not climbing anything at Hammers any worse than we climb here in the east.
Right.
It's dry. You've always got traction. You're just always bottoming out everywhere, and it's just picking a line that lets you keep moving. That's a big thing out there. So going out there first time, I pre-run the whole course in my 1000, just the one I ride trails on. And so I knew what to expect, and we took off, and we get out in the open desert part, and we're running 50, 55, and I think, man, this feels pretty good. And these people were passing me like I'm sitting still.
Really?
I was like, you're going to break that thing. You need to calm down. We moved right along, and that machine is built stock. It's stock length, it's stock width.
Right.
We're running good shocks and good arms and stuff like that, but stock length and width in the desert through whoops, you need a little bit more travel. You almost need more travel. You don't have to have it, but it's almost more of an advantage to have a little more travel.
Now, where does that more travel help you?
It helps you in the faster sections, in the whoops, in the rough desert and stuff like that. And the rocks, not as much.
Yeah.
It's all helpful.
Yeah.
But so we get out there and we get all the way around. We do the first lap. We get all the way around the Chocolate Thunder, and we go up that, and we're getting towards the next checkpoint. And I look at the dash, and it's like 3 o'clock. We get to the next checkpoint, and we're out of time.
Right.
They have cutoffs at every checkpoint. And, it's kind of frustrating, but at the same time, I'm glad. I'm like, this is stupid. Why am I even out here?
Yeah.
This is crazy hard. It's so hard on my machine and whatever.
Yeah.
And so kind of go back and kind of reevaluate, what's it worth and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is it worth even going and doing it? And some people say yes, some people say no. Some of it's ego. Mm-hmm. And I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at.
Right.
I know how to race and I know how to finish, but it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be a front runner.
Right.
But we go out there for nitro exposure and, just stay in front of people. That's the biggest thing, the nitro in general. Mm-hmm. And then we go race UTV World Championships in that same one, use it in the short course. Mm-hmm. And it felt better there just because it's not racing through rocks.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's racing through the desert, but it's a loop. We do like 3 laps, and that was the race. And it did fair in that,
So you finished, right?
Yeah, we finished that one for sure.
Okay. What place you in?
I don't know. It was mid-pack or something.
Okay, gotcha.
So maybe out of 30, we got like 20 or 40 out of 20. I don't know, something like that. So, did fair. Did okay.
Absolutely.
And then from there, actually early on in the year, I had the goal to try desert racing.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen pictures of that one. So
now that rig, I have to say, that was built by
Fabworks.
Fabworks. Okay. So you started with a 4-seater turbo.
Yeah, we started with an 18 4-seat turbo razor.
Yep. Because at the time I was keeping track of you, and you would spend a ton of time in California, and you were selling parts off, and I actually think you ended up having parts stolen out of your trailer. It was just it seemed like a bad experience. But when you unveiled that, if you're online, you're going to look for the picture. It is it's a 2-seater. It's a custom 2-seater.
It's a 4-seat converted back to a 2-seat.
Correct. And it's got kind of the same look of the 2-seater, but it's all red, white, and blue. 968's the number on it, and this thing's sharp. This thing is very, very sharp. So tell me, when you guys were designing it, what's the benefit of taking a 4-seater and pushing it to a 2-seater?
The biggest thing in that is wheelbase.
Right.
Well, we push it out wider. We used the Super ATV's long travel kit to get more travel out of it.
Right.
So it was plus 3 inches per side.
Right.
So it was pushing like 75 inches wide or something that.
That's huge.
So here in the East, that is wide.
Yeah.
Maybe not so much now that the Turbo S is out.
Right.
But that is a wide machine. It's made for open desert. It's made to run across that kind of stuff. So the wheelbase is very helpful in the rougher desert, the whoops and stuff like that. And that kind of racing, you're never really in tight situations. You might be going through like wash bed areas.
Yeah.
But it's big enough for trophy trucks going through there because they're doing the same course.
Right.
So, that was the big advantage to that. And I started planning on that one like October the year before that.
Right.
And I locked in where to get the razor from, at a good deal. And I reached out to Fabworks and, I asked him, because Fabworks did all the fab work as far as chassis and body work.
Right, correct.
And I can bolt it together. That's not incredibly hard. And then there's another company, UTV Wiring, in Arizona. They make a lot of high-end wiring components. Yes, they actually build race harnesses for razors.
That's amazing.
So I connected with him, and he's the one that did all the wiring on it. And when you're building something like that, and it's going to be going like a couple 100 miles per race,
right?
You need to kind of spend the money to have good stuff in it.
Certainly.
Good wiring, even as down as like good relays, good fuel pumps, stuff like that. Because again, you're into it so deep that you can't afford to not finish.
Right.
Even if you're doing it for fun, you don't want to be stuck out in the middle of the desert for a whole day waiting on Best in the Desert to come out there and rescue you.
That's like a King of Hammers car this year. Like a connection on the alternator blew out, and you have a full-size King of Hammers rig. I think it was actually Levi Shirley that had this problem, and he blew that part out. Everything was running perfect. It was a brand new machine, and it was a 10-cent part that cost them the race.
Yeah.
It can happen.
So it does happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes this thing's overlooked, and sometimes freak things happen.
Right.
I mean, it is what it is. But when I put all the time thinking into that car, FabWorks has been building, fabbing chassis and roll cages, stuff like that for UTVs since the Rhino days.
Right.
Like way before Polaris had got into the game as far as the Razor.
Right.
So, and I knew some other guys that he had built their chassis, so I reached out to him, and that car was all chromoly.
Yeah.
You have to use a stock frame.
Right.
As far as all the suspension mount points, the motor mount point, so you have to use the bottom rails and the mount points, and everything above that is all chromoly, and it's all built up basically like a NASCAR. They cage it in.
Yeah.
They lay in the fuel tank where it goes, and we kind of work backwards from that. I put a 32-gallon cell in it.
Ooh, that's a lot of fuel.
Yeah, but I mean, racing desert, you need it.
Yeah, you don't want to be
You're
stuck
going a long ways.
Can't run back to the gas station.
Yeah, exactly. But we did that, and we tried desert racing for a whole year. I went to every race, and at the end of the day, I realized it's expensive to live in the East and race in the West.
Yes,
because I didn't even have time to go testing like what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Like when I got there, it was like we're prepping it for the race, like bushings, bolts, belts, oils, change the transmission if it needs to, whatever we need to change, and then we just go race it.
Right.
Like, so all I know is what it rode like last time.
Right.
Instead of actually having time to go out and get the shocks, like Shock Therapy did the shocks on that one, and they had it running great, and it felt awesome. But certain situations, it needed some adjustments to adapt to that course.
Sure.
So, and I didn't have time for that.
Sure.
So that's, it was costly. I mean, between plane flights, and luckily I had someone to leave it out there with us.
Right.
Or, and I could just fly out there and meet them.
Right.
But, it's costly. Plane flights, hotels, gas.
Yeah.
And just the travel back and forth was expensive outside of the entry fees and parts and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You're averaging thousands per race.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. So this car's performance, what is the race that you guys raced it in? I think you had it in 2 races, correct?
No, that desert car, we raced a full Best in the Desert series.
Oh, wow.
So we started at the Mint 400.
Right. Yes, fuel issues?
Yeah, we had fuel system issues on that one. And then, but got it fixed, and we raced and finished the rest of the races.
Yeah.
Vegas Reno, we had a fuel system issue again.
Okay.
And that's another thing. It's just the prep of it. We're running dual fuel pumps on a flip switch, so if one goes bad, we just flip to the other one and keep going. I had both pumps running to one filter.
Oh, wow.
The filter clogged up, so there's no way to get around that one bad filter.
Right.
Totally my fault.
Yeah.
So I rerouted it, and I put 2 filters on it.
There you go.
And so now we can switch. We're running dual ECUs.
Yeah.
So if one goes bad, we just unplug and plug back in.
That's a wiring nightmare.
Well, not really. You just stack 2 ECUs together.
Yeah.
And you unplug them off of one.
Yeah.
And plug it back on.
Hey, that's the easy way to do it.
Yeah, we're not rebuilding the whole harness.
Yeah.
All on a flip switch.
You say 2 ECUs, and I just think of like some opening some kind of server closet where you just got wires and everything everywhere.
But I mean, on vehicles like that, you're running backup systems.
Sure.
A lot of it just in case.
Sure.
And the car did great.
Yeah.
It was fun to drive.
Yeah. Now you actually ended up getting rid of this car, correct?
I let it go because at the end of the day, like, I can't use it here.
Right.
It's too big.
In the East, most trails are built for the standard 1,000 width, and with the new Turbo S, I think that we'll see the trails start to expand.
Eventually. But at the end of the day, it's too expensive to race it.
Sure.
So we let it go, and we put that towards what we do with adventures.
Yeah.
And races here on the East and stuff like that. So we're never really out of the game.
Yeah.
We're just kind of changing the focus.
So when you say we put that towards adventures here on the East, I know that you I haven't seen you race here in the East. Is that am I incorrect?
No, I've raced woods races and stuff like that. There's a series, Rally Raid in Alabama.
Okay. Yeah.
A few years back. I raced it quite a few times, and that series is no longer.
Okay.
Pro Rock and Pro UTV.
Yeah, that's what I was
they have a new
Survival Series,
a 2-hour race.
Wow.
That's kind of right up my alley.
Yeah.
Because, okay, there are some fast people out there, no doubt, but you have to make it last for 2 hours.
Oh, and that is every East Coast driver listening to me right now, y'all have a bad habit of holding it together. I go out and ride with some of y'all, and y'all aren't off the trailer yet, and somehow you've broken everything.
Yeah.
So y'all got to learn how to hold it together.
I know a few guys, they show up with like 8 or 10 axles just because they know they're going to go through them. I'm like, okay, well.
I haven't been riding for a ton of time, and I started riding, and I started noticing these guys would snap an axle, and for me, that would ruin my day. And I'm not someone who carries just 3 or 4 axles, and the first time I saw someone snap an axle, that axle broke, stabbed his tire, got a flat. And within 15 minutes, we were back at his truck, and he opens his cabinets up. He's got 10 axles, just grabs one out, grabs a whole new tire, wheel, everything, just pumps it back on. I'm like, A, why are you so prepared for this? And B, like, how do you just have all these things? And he's like, I know how I drive, so I'm prepared to make sure I can be out here all day long.
Yeah, so I'm going to look into the
Pro Rock series.
The Pro Rock series.
Everybody racing Pro Rock, watch out.
Well, I'm not claiming to be a front runner.
Yeah.
But it's a fun type of racing because
Sure.
you have some time in the machine.
Yeah.
There's some, like I say, the hill killer stuff is awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're shooting up a hill and you're done.
Yeah. Not a lot of time in there.
And the carnage, if it does go bad, is usually pretty bad.
And on top of that, the typically the top 3 are the only ones that walk away with any kind of gain. And you look at these racers, and I always tell people that people who are racing, they may win $5,000, $10,000, whatever at the end of it, but that's just a penny in the water, in the dollar that is their race budget.
Yeah.
You're not coming out ahead when you race, and that's something that people always seem to misunderstand. Is these guys who afford their racing, it takes all their winnings. It takes everything that you have in mind, and it's just how it is.
So I mean, with all that being said, knowing what I know now, or after that last King of the Hammers, kind of knowing what I knew, at the time you're kind of like,
no, you're fine. Hubert's got a big old Doberman, and it's actually amazing. He's got the Doberman has his own room built into the wall under the stairs, and he was over there asking to be let out, so Hubert just let him out. But
he's whining because he's been inside. It's been raining so much. He wants to go outside and chase bunnies and squirrels.
Man, it doesn't sound too bad. Some days when I'm at work, I wish I was a dog chasing bunnies and squirrels. But so going back to it, the Pro Rock Series is a chance to be in your machine a little bit more. I don't have the full details on what exactly that course is. You said it's going to be 2-hour races?
Yeah, so talking to Joey and the guys that run Pro Rock and Pro UTV, it's basically, they call it a survival series or whatever. It'll be a 2-hour race.
Yeah.
So you're racing for 2 hours straight, and therefore whoever is leading at the last few minutes or whatever is the winner, or most
That's
laps
exciting.
or whatever like that. So it'll be a lot of fun. The course, from what I'm told, the course will be laid out anywhere from 10 miles or more.
Wow. Now, see, I understood it in the kind of the mindset of the short course, where it's a couple miles, but again, I don't know anything about it, so hearing that it's going to be that kind of long,
I could be wrong. Now,
sure,
the rally raid racing, it was a 12-mile loop.
That's amazing,
and it was on a fairly small area in comparison. So you just I kind of have to wait and see on mileage wise. But I mean, I think they're going to push for pretty long miles. That we don't have to do quite so many laps.
Sure.
And it won't be just flat out. Like, they'll make it go through rock sections. They'll make it do some hill climb. They'll make it do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
So,
to me, it sounds like a miniature East Coast Hammers.
Yeah. I mean, same thing. And, I would love to see a King of the Hammers East Coast.
So
I'd love to see that.
Ultra 4 is actually coming to Adventure Off-Road Park in April. I don't have the exact date, but I listened to Ian Johnson talk during the King of Hammers, while they were commentating the race, and they mentioned that it was coming over. It sounds like to me, and again, I could be completely wrong. I haven't put enough research into it. I'm even, cautious talking about it. It sounds like to me that they're going to have the full-size rigs run a couple-mile lap track in Adventure. And have you ever been to Adventure Off-Road?
I've been there. It's
pretty tight.
it's a tight area.
Yeah.
It's the park is about 500 acres.
Right.
It's on the front side of a mountain.
Yep.
So it's a pretty cool park. It's more of a rock crawler park.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily too UTV friendly. Just because the trails are just
the beach it to death.
So rough.
They are.
Now, I mean, a lot of people go there UTVs, and a lot of people have a good time.
To be honest with you, that's my favorite place to go ride because of the distance, and just the fact that you can get into a bunch of different spots. But again, I'm someone who enjoys a little bit more technical stuff, and just from my experience, you will get the crap beat out of you after a day of riding there.
Yeah, it's a rough place, but it's a lot of fun, and we'll just wait and see what the Ultra 4 thing brings there.
Yeah, absolutely.
The survival series, I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
The first one is actually at Dirty Turtle.
Okay, and that's is that this weekend?
That's March 1st weekend.
So that is
when they win. So that's basically next weekend.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in all honesty, if it's a straight out mudder, I'm not racing it.
I understand.
There's no point in me to go out there and just
run your. Yeah.
And my mindset is there's no point in just going and running in the mud for 2 hours straight. Mm-hmm. Kind of no matter what the prize money is.
Now, see, I completely get that. There's an Ultra 4 East Coast that they do, and I think it's in Kentucky. It's the race. I don't remember.
They've done one in Kentucky, one in Oklahoma.
Okay, the one I'm thinking of is in Kentucky, and I watched the UTV series on it. I think it was last year or the year before, and it just looked like a big mud track. And I agree with you. To go out there and put your unit just in a mud hole, I mean,
I can do that here, and I can just go through the pond.
Exactly.
I don't need to pay to go do that anywhere.
Well, you don't even need to pay, but I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I don't like mud. I don't like running my stuff through. I mean, there's a time and place for everything, and a little bit here and there is fine, but I would much rather go run through the woods, at 20, 25 miles an hour rather than go sit through a mud hole.
Yeah, and I mean, just the mud, it's wear and tear, and it's lots of work to get it all back up and going, and that's fine. That's just part of it, like no big deal. But at the same time, that doesn't excite me, so that's not what I'm going to do.
Right.
So we'll look into more of the series and.
Well, I hope to see you out there.
And stuff like that. Yeah. And then you got my King of the Hammers from this year.
Yeah, so that's what I want to talk about next. So I walk up to Hubert's castle here, and I see his chassis.
Let's not say castle anymore. Just say shop.
We'll just say shop. How about that? Let's paint the right picture there. I pull up and I see his brand new wide open design chassis on the trailer, completely torn down. And we walked through a shop and he said, "Hey, do you want to see my new King of Hammers rig?" And I was like thinking to myself, "Well, I think it's on the trailer out there." And he's like, he points over to the corner and there's an engine in the floor along with about every other part, just kind of tossed off to the side. And I see this pile of dirt where it was all taken down. So tell us. I want to start from the ground up because it is a amazing machine. First route, right out of the gate. The chassis, wide open design. Tell us about it.
So, here in the Southeast, Razor buggies or Razor crawlers or Razor bouncers are pretty common and becoming more and more common.
Right.
So that's that just seeing that that kind of was always a thought of them. Those would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Gotta let the dog in. So for those who don't know, there are a couple manufacturers in the Southeast that make, I don't want to say templated, but that kind of a similar design, a chassis that they know that they've tested and it works really well. Dogs running around, I'm going to put them in the shop. There we go. Razor Sharp Customs makes one, Pruitt Chassis, Pruitt Customs, they make one. There's a bunch of guys that make them, and they're really awesome machines. It's amazing whenever you get someone who can build one in their shop personally. They'll build works of art, just beautiful chassis. But these kind of manufacturer chassis that they make, they're pretty, I don't want to say plain, but they're very structurally well designed, and they give someone a chance to build a roller. I know a lot of these shops, you can just drop off a Razor, or you can order a chassis and they'll give you a chassis back. You can send in an entire unit there and they'll send one, they'll send you your buggy completely buttoned up right back out the door. And I don't know prices off the top of my head. Y'all feel free to get in contact with those manufacturers. But Wide Open Design has actually never built a Razor chassis to my knowledge. This seems like it was the first one, right? Yeah,
for sure. So, like we were saying, in the Southeast and like you were explaining, there's the Razor bouncers, crawlers, chassis, whatever you want to call them, are fairly common.
Right.
But it's really only in this part of the country. You don't even see them at King of the Hammers very much.
One thing that I've constantly seen, I actually had a Toxic Off-Road built a chassis for me, and in the South there's I don't want to say it's unnecessary, but there's art to the chassis. They make them look a certain way, lots of tubes just to make sure the user's going to be safe. A lot of the guys in the West who have come out, or even guys here in the East, they're like, why do they put so much tube into them? Why do they do this and that? They're just making them heavy. Guys, it's an art thing. It's about building something that's not only effective and structurally sound, but you really get a chance to build something that looks cool, that's unique. There's a million different ways. So it is a different style than what the wide open design chassis is. There's definitely the rock bouncer versus a chassis that not necessarily mimics the stock Razor chassis, but it makes improvements upon it, and kind of wherever that stock chassis has room to grow, this is where it goes. And it's a lot more functional platform, not just necessarily built for holding two people. This is something that's built for holding gear, built for diverse terrain. There's a lot more that goes into it than just building a chassis that looks cool, although sometimes that's what people do.
Oh yeah, and in the West, most stuff is built very race car looking.
Right.
You have the trophy trucks and the Ultra 4 cars, they're kind of, I want to say, a little bit square box style. Right. Everything just has a race chassis look to it. So everything's kind of going to mimic that. Where here in the Southeast, we're just a bunch of hillbillies bending a bunch of tubes together. So the mindset is a little bit different. It's more as open. Like, I like just the kind of the simple race car look.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it is just a little bit simpler. Mm-hmm. But the big bouncers, the little bouncers, they're a lot more abstract with kind of nearly a spider web look to them.
Absolutely.
And that's fine. That's all on whatever the person wants. But wide open design, they push out some of the best quality, best working,
I would agree,
big buggies
they're
in the Southeast.
Man, if you haven't seen them,
probably basically just in the East, they're some of the highest quality, best built buggies there are. They've had buggies in SEMA, and all kind of stuff, and that's all in the big buggy. And they build razor cages. Mm-hmm. They've built us numerous razor cages for Nitro Circus and Travis, and my trail buggies and all that kind of stuff. As far as razor stuff, they build bumpers. They build a lot of cool stuff. And the owner I went to high school with him.
Oh, that's cool.
And I helped him out, just helped him out here and there with his.
What's his name?
Adam Woodley.
Adam Woodley.
So I went to high school with him, and they started in his dad's garage.
Yeah.
They took a S10 Blazer, basically put it up on a full-size truck chassis, Dana 44s, and then they did a couple of cab trucks, and then they did one or two like tube chassis, and then it just kind of went off, because as time grew, they grew, and the quality, they're always trying to go above and beyond as far as the quality and all that kind of stuff. So, I had mentioned to him numerous times, what about building a Razor chassis? Mm-hmm. And he said, man, I'd love to. He's like, I do see there's a market for it. He said, but we need to go about it in a certain way to where I'm not just building one and we're done.
Right.
Because to some people that are listening, some people get it, some people don't.
Right.
A one and done full custom build, if you can charge for every hour, there's money in it.
Right.
But you're going to have a crap load of money and time into it.
You are.
And not everyone is willing to pay that. That's just how it is. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. Trophy trucks are averaging $250,000 plus.
Just for the chassis.
Well, you can buy a used one for whatever, but you're $250,000 plus as far as a trophy truck goes.
Right.
Bryce Minzy, his all-wheel drive trophy truck, is pushing over $1 million. And
$1 million.
That's time, development, man hours, bending, welding, fabbing, engineering. There's a lot of money in that.
Yeah.
So there ain't nobody here on the East going to pay that kind of stuff. Now, the big buggies, they get up in price, and especially if you're going all brand new stuff, like brand new motor, brand new transmission, new axles. If you're building everything brand new, products alone, you're a lot of money into it. You can't help it.
Yeah.
And then the fab work on top of it, well, that's nothing compared to all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I've been, working with him he's had one of my razors up there for almost a year.
Really? Which one?
So we pulled a turbo that I had.
Yeah.
I bought one wrecked, and we took it up there, and then I had a frame from another one that was perfectly fine. We took it up there, and he pulled measurements off of it to get, because the Polaris Razor chassis, the Razor handles very well.
Yeah, excellent.
So why would you want to change that?
Agreed.
You just want to add to it, make it a little bit stronger. So he took the time and he pulled measurements, and he CAD drew the whole thing on CAD and SolidWorks, and then he kind of moved things around. And I said, well, I want to put this RS1 turbo diff in the front of it.
Right.
So we need to adapt the frame to that.
Right.
I said, but the frame should also accept the other diff. So no
just
matter,
in case.
if someone only has the other diff, that's what they'll use.
Right.
Or they can, so you want to adapt that. You want to adapt radiator location. Certain things don't move. The motor stays where it stays.
Right.
The arms
stay
all
where
the
they
way around.
stay.
The arms and shocks all stay in certain places.
And that's one of the most beautiful things about people who design a chassis and they do a good job is you can, you design a chassis and the arms, the axles, things like that. You can go get axles and arms off the shelf because all of those mounting locations are just mimicking the stock locations. The cool thing that you can alter on the chassis is things like wheelbase and radiator location, things like that. But the best part about this stuff, and something I want to talk about next, is you can use the same parts that you would use on your regular 1000 on your chassis buggy.
Yeah. So the big picture goal with Wide Open Design and their chassis was, let's reuse as many parts as we can.
Sure.
Because why should you have to go buy more? And why should I have to go make more?
Correct.
He's like, and Razor Sharp and Pruitt and all that, they do a lot of the same things. They're using the same power steering, the same rack, the same arms. They're using a lot of the same parts. We're just using a few more. Like my chassis, we use a stock seat frame in it. It bolts right in.
Yeah.
Because why do you need to change that?
Agreed.
Like, even if you have a wrecked Razor, it's very rarely that you bend the seat frame.
Right.
So the seat frame bolts in, and then your stock Razor seats bolt in, or the seats you have. They pop right in.
Seats.
Then your shifter, it just fits right. You never even have to pull your shifter off.
Right.
It's still there. So, that's hours or time that they would have to make a shifter mount and put it somewhere else when that's all just perfectly fine. We'll just use that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, of course, you use your regular pedals, and there's a lot of things that you use naturally, but we try to use more.
Yeah.
And, I told him, I said, I want a fuel cell at least as big as stock, if not more.
Right.
Because a lot of these chassis, they're kind of hill climbing in mind. They don't need a lot of fuel.
Right.
Their tanks are pushing 4 to 5 gallons.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
To race up a hill, that's fine to, ride around fairly close. But I use more than that just riding around Windrock.
I was about to say, so I actually raced my Toxic off-road buggy. I rode it around Windrock. We would do 8 hours one way and 8 hours back. And we'd have to pull off the mountain and find a gas station for me because I'd probably say I had an 8, 9, 10 gallon fuel cell. And, it sounds like enough, but when you're pushing, a 1000 XP motor, pushing 32s, and you're driving up some pretty rough stuff, keeping up with, regular Razors just going down the street too, those bigger tires, the motor, everything adds up. And all of a sudden your buddies in stock machines, they have half a tank and you're out of gas and you're in the middle of a trail.
Yeah, and I learned a lot about fuel mileage on the cross country trip.
I'm sure you did.
Because I took a General, an XP1000, and a Razor Turbo.
Yeah.
So the XP1000 got the best mileage out of all three.
Really?
Now it and the General have the same motor, but the General transmission is slightly lower geared.
Okay.
So it's burning a little bit more.
Right.
And of course the turbo, it was a tank and a half out of that turbo to a tank of the 1000.
Wow.
That's how much more it burned.
Yeah. What was the reason? Do you know?
It's just because it's a turbo motor.
Just because it's a turbo.
It's just pushing more fuel through.
Right.
And, and we're driving pretty conservative, like, 40 miles an hour down gravel roads and stuff like that, just cruising along, not using lots of power, just trying to get good mileage.
Yeah.
And so we learned right off, XP1000, the furthest we went was 188 miles on a tank.
That's a lot.
And we pulled into the gas station, it was blinking.
Yeah.
And it had a little more than half a gallon left in it after calculating what it took. So, we pushed it nearly as far as you can without running out.
Do you know how much fuel gallon-wise stock 1000
stock machines hold roughly about 9 gallons.
Okay.
So my tank in my Wide Open Design chassis is a 10-gallon tank.
Okay.
So we built this first one around Ultra 4 and their rules because I was going to go race it.
Right.
So it's a plastic fuel cell with an aluminum can built around it.
Okay.
That's required.
Yeah.
We adapted the factory fuel pump to fit inside there and just changed the fuel lines. That was pretty basic of it.
Sure.
The next ones we'll just have to see. He's going to reevaluate some different fuel tank options.
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily need that same fuel tank setup for everybody.
Right.
We only need it for that type of racing. so we'll evaluate what fits the best, what kind of looks the best, because they're a lot about the finished image.
Sure.
Because that's what people see.
Yeah, certainly.
So my fuel tank is actually in the console. It's under the dash, right in the console. So I'm putting a little more weight up front anyways.
Yeah.
And you fill it from the front. You just pull the front hood off, and it's the fuel tank right there.
Yeah.
So, it worked very well.
Yeah.
So we'll back up to where that was the initial thought of, let's build it like this, let's do this.
Your dog wants
well, I let him outside back.
That's how it is, man. You let them outside, and they want back in as soon as they come back.
You're going to come in. You're going to be quiet. Get in here.
But moving towards the Ultra 4, other than the design components, what makes that design different as far as like wheelbase? Is it actually longer?
So yes, I did some research and just talked to different people with razor crawlers and stuff like that, and like what wheelbases, and my razor is sitting at like a Can-Am X3 wheelbase.
Okay.
So in the desert, you need a little bit more wheelbase.
Right.
But you don't need as much as a 4-seat when it comes to the rocks.
Right.
So we kind of come up with a happy medium.
Yeah.
And I don't know why he's being so whiny.
Oh, it's all right.
No. So with that being said, we kind of went with that wheelbase as a general.
Yeah.
The biggest thing we wanted, area for a toolbox or a cooler if you want. Some of these razor chassis don't have that. They're more so just people, and that's it.
So what you're actually building is, you're not building just Hubert's Ultra 4 rig. You're actually going to help them. You've helped them design the rig that they're going to manufacture and that they're going to sell out. Because I personally, when I go ride, I bring a toolbox, but the next guy, he goes ride, he's not worried about breaking anything. He's going to bring in the cooler. So you guys designed this in mind to be mass manufactured.
So he's designed this, and I've just kind of pointed in directions I think would work.
Sure.
As far as there's nothing wrong with a stock razor.
Right, correct.
It does everything very well. Mm-hmm. But there is enough of them that have been wrecked, that people buy wrecked and they want to kind of upgrade stuff.
Sure.
That maybe this is an option you could do. The goal would be to have a complete chassis that has everything. He can send it to you already powder coated or bare. Mm-hmm. And you just bolt everything into it. Like, it has the fuel pumps.
Yeah.
Or not the fuel pump, because you use a stock pump.
Right.
It would have a fuel tank, the lines, any kind of wire extensions it would need.
Drive line.
The drive line. It would have all this stuff with it. So you just bolt everything in. The goal is to make it, relatively simple and very universal, where it could go anywhere.
Yeah.
Now, everyone that saw my chassis, they loved it. They said it's awesome. But, there are the hill climb people that they don't really prefer it, because it's kind of more, it's a shrunk down Ultra 4 car.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, it's just a little race car looking thing.
Yeah.
And, a lot of the hill climber type people, they just have that image of that spider web looking hill climber. It's like, well, that won't do the same thing. Well, no, it'll do exactly what yours will do.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't appear that way.
One of the things that I've seen is there's a Blue Torch Fab razor out there, and it's a very similar idea of what he's talking about, this more boxy race style. And it is out there, and it competes in the Pro Rock Series right now. There's full bodies that are out there in the Pro Rock Series. A stock razor can get out there and climb in these hills and these events and do well and complete the hills and do everything you need to do. Again, it really comes down to the driver. What do you want out of your rig? How easily do you want to be able to climb something? Do you want your center of gravity a little bit lower? By no means, and I think Hubert would agree with this, by no means do you need, a $75,000 buggy to climb this hill and be competitive. Now, I'll use competitive a little loosely there. The guys who have a fully blown designed buggy will have an advantage every single bit of the day. But as far as getting up there and being able to be a part of this, you can do this with a stock machine.
Yes, and we look at it, I look at it, and Water Design, they look at it as, they make their money from trail rig people.
Right.
Racers, unfortunately, people won't like hearing me say this, but racers and racing is a very small percentage of sales.
I would agree.
Extremely small.
I agree.
It's not, in all honesty, it's not even big enough to cater towards. And people don't want to hear that, because if you've made your life about racing, well, that's all you know, and that's fine. But there's way more people out riding trails than there are racing up a hill.
Yeah, think about that.
Guaranteed.
That first time you went to Brimstone and you just saw, if you go to Camp Razor East or West, you'll come out there and you'll just see hundreds of Razors.
Oh, Camp Razor West, 100,000 people.
100,000 people. That's insane. And just think about the maybe 5 people out there who maybe race competitively.
Well, it's bigger, but at the same time, racing is only so big.
Right.
And there is exposure in racing, no doubt.
Right.
But the difference between racing and trails or adventures or whatever is a lot of people like watching racing.
Yeah.
But they don't necessarily want to race.
That is this guy right here.
Well, there's the cost of racing.
Absolutely.
There's building a machine for racing.
Sure.
There's the cost of just upkeeping it. There's a lot of cost where you're glad to watch it, sit on the sidelines. Oh, that looks awesome. Mm-hmm. All right, we'll go ride some trails, and I'll hit this little hill, and I'll feel like I did the same thing, and we're fine.
Yeah.
So the racers, there's much less. And here's a little spec or a little stat for you that I think your listeners would really find like mind blowing. So in 2016, there's 250,000 UTVs sold.
In 2016.
In 2016.
Woo!
That's all brands, all types.
Woo!
Okay, so at that given time, Polaris owned 80% of the market.
Woo!
So 80% of 250,000. Okay, so let's back up again. Back up, 250,000. 70% of that 250,000 were utility models bought for utility purposes.
So utility purposes being farms, moving equipment.
That's
things like
Rangers and Pioneers and Maverick, whatever. That just shows the real market is not in sport. Sport is only 30% of the market in sales for UTVs, period.
Right.
So those of us that are all up in the sport stuff, and you see them everywhere, and you see sport machines all over Windrock and Brimstone and Moab, and you think, man, that's everything. No, that's only 30% of the market.
That's amazing.
And
that seems low.
You back up and think about that for a minute. So out of that 30%, how many people actually race?
Yeah.
I would say 5% or less.
Sure, you start splitting hairs.
So why do we need to cater towards that?
Yeah, I agree.
And I'm not saying don't, but back up and look at a company, and if they know all those specs, well, they'd rather build damn trailer hitches for Rangers.
Absolutely.
Because Polaris has sold over 1 million Rangers. They haven't built 250,000 Razors yet.
They haven't built 250,000 Razors.
As far as like XP1000. They haven't built that many XP1000s yet.
Wow.
So.
And how long has the XP1000 been out?
14.
14. So it's been out 5 years. They're coming up on 5.
So just let the viewers just think about that for a minute. I mean, we'll continue on.
Right.
But so you got a hardcore racer, and now that you have those numbers to know, you just think about it. And some people will get it, some people won't.
Right.
But at the same time, that's where I worked with Adam at Wide Open Design. It's like he agrees with building it more of an all-purpose razor, just a better version.
Yeah, I think
now they can build a full hill killer. And they very well may in the future. But the initial platform to start will be something similar to what I have.
Right.
We'll put opening doors on it. Now, as far as the base of the chassis, all the mounting, that stays the same no matter what you build.
Pretty much stock, just reinforced.
Yeah, I mean, your arm mounting and your motor mounting and your diff mounting, all that will always stay the same. It has to.
Right.
So that doesn't mean he can't change the uppers to look just like a hill killer.
Exactly.
It's nothing but drawing it up on CAD and bending it out, and there it is. You have a hill killer that started as my machine.
Right.
So then you instantly got I want one of those. Well, what about this one? Well, I don't really like that. Hey, it's the same machine, man. It's just a couple tubes built different.
Exactly.
And they're like, I didn't realize that. It just takes that looking outside of that box.
Absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe ORB, Off-Road Beast, they actually sell, and I could be wrong here, they sell the lower portion where they actually will bend out the stock mounts that he's talking about, and basically you build your chassis on top of that. If you're a fabricator, look into that, fact check me. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I believe that's how my chassis that I raced was built. It started, again, as an ORB lower section, and then basically the designer went from the ground up on that.
Yeah, there's a couple people that do that, You know, if you're a fabricator and you love building your own stuff, that's where it's at.
Yeah.
I'm not a fabricator. I can
not either.
I can fix things.
Yeah.
And I can build small things, and I'm a mechanic. That's what I am. I can bolt things together. You know, I can pull a motor, new crank, new turbo. I can do all that kind of stuff. Bending tube, that's a mystery. That's a mystery beyond me. Like, I can't even bend the brake line without it messing up.
I was about to say.
Much less doing all that.
Yeah.
But, so that's kind of where the chassis came from,
the
wide open design. You know, there's a lot of time into it, and, you know, we're fixing to start on another one.
Yeah.
Because I had bought another wrecked razor.
Very exciting.
So this next one will change some of the image lines of it to kind of look a little more aggressive.
Sure.
We'll put opening doors on it. And then we'll have 2 in a row that's kind of different versions.
Yeah.
And then kind of proceed forward with that.
Right.
That way he'll have a couple different options for people to pick. And once you get the options rolling, the jigs made and all that kind of stuff, then
it becomes faster turnaround.
Then you can kind of go from there.
Yeah.
His guys can build full size, like just a bare chassis, silly amounts of time.
Who's the guy that did the welding on yours that you posted a couple times on your Instagram?
Oh, Travis.
So I've ridden with Travis a couple times, just here and there.
He's got a cab truck that's awesome.
He's got a cab truck that is just cool. But that guy and his ability to weld is just, it's an artistic level.
Well, I mean, every person in the wide open shop has got just crazy skills.
Absolutely.
And I mean, there's tons of people that are listening that have crazy skills also.
Absolutely.
But they're like kind of 1 per shop or maybe 2 per shop. Well, this
is a great group of people.
These guys, like all of his guys back there that fab, and they're amazing welders. They're great at fabrication. They're just great at what they do. He's got a machinist back there that's machining parts that's super knowledgeable. I mean, Adam knows how to do all of it. And it's unreal. And so I dealt with FabWorks on Desert Car.
Yeah.
Him and his 2 guys, same way. I mean, just
a great group.
Just amazing people, can lay just the most amazing beads that I can only dream of doing.
Yeah, I can't.
I mean, I stick stuff together and it looks fair, and it should hold for the most part.
I've always heard a strong will necessarily doesn't have to be beautiful.
Yeah. So, you know, the guys are unreal. But we rolled into building this rig. You know, I wanted it done earlier in the year, and they're so backed up on like big buggies and big paying jobs, and just jobs in general, that he's like, we got to fit it in. He's like, I can't just push money away to do this, and you know, I'm still paying for it, but it's kind of an initial just let's get it going type thing. He's like, this is going to take longer than what it should. He's like, so we have to evaluate the time. I was like, all right, well that's fine. I was like, look, I'm here these months. I said, let's goal to race it at King of the Hammers, and we'll just let it out there. And he's like, all right. So we push it all together. I ordered the parts we need, the fuel cell, fuel lines, you know, wiring extensions. You know, I ordered everything we need, and we start firing away on it. And we built that entire thing in 2 weeks.
I saw. I was following your little sneak previews on Instagram.
2 weeks, like that's it. 2 weeks, like I built my full Desert Car in 3.5 weeks. Woo. And that's
crazy.
You know, FabWorks knocked out the chassis in like a week.
Yeah.
And they knew the time frame. And then the wiring guy helped me. We knocked that out in about a week. And then the bolting and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So this was even tighter. And it's not like we were going off of a stock chassis and just adding tubes. This was starting from nothing.
Yeah.
So they built like a base lower. And then they went up.
Yeah.
And they started, you know, just pushing out stuff and moving around. And we had to reevaluate where things go. And this needs to go here and not here. And, you know, but 2 weeks of many, many late nights. I mean, we stayed until at least 9 o'clock at night, every night for 2 weeks. Oof. The last 2 days, we were there for 48 hours straight in the shop.
Woo, man.
Look, them boys clocked in at like 7 a.m. Friday morning, and didn't leave until almost Sunday morning.
Man,
like we stayed there and worked nonstop to get it done. And we go to turn the key, and the thing wouldn't even start.
What's wrong?
It would start with some gas, but it wouldn't run. And I had to get it home, so the guy came and wrapped it while it was there. We got it back to my shop, and my goal was to be at Hammers the Sunday before.
Yeah, I noticed you left late.
This was Sunday I was working on it still.
Yeah.
So I get it here, and I pull out my box of parts, and I'm trading sensors, I'm changing plugs, injectors, fuel rails, all kind of stuff. Nothing seemed to change it, and it was throwing a code I don't remember what the code was, and I texted a few people that I knew within the Polaris, within the race team, within engineering, of like, what could this be? And they give me a list of things to check. Well, they all check out fine. So it was whatever, and my buddies, Chris West, Shake and Bake Powder Coat.
Shout out to Shake and Bake.
Yeah, him and our buddy Rocky, they had come out. They wanted to just ride some trails, and I was, neck deep in this thing. So they sent all the friends, girlfriends, whoever, just wives out, just go ride trails, and they sat there and helped me work on it.
Very nice.
For a few hours, and never could click with it, whatever. And so I about pulled my hair out. So I got in a razor, and we just went and rode some trails for like an hour, just to kind of
mellow out,
break it out. I was like, I'm late, it doesn't matter, but I'm still going. So I stayed up until like 5 a.m. that night.
Man.
Got everything on it, skid plate, radios wired, all the wiring, got everything done, minus it didn't run good.
Yeah.
I loaded it in the trailer, not running. I mean, it would run with gas, but nothing else.
That's a bold move.
And I didn't even bring my other turbo as a spare.
You just took that one.
I was like, there's nothing. I have to make it work. So I text Mark Queen Racing out in Lake Havasu.
Yeah.
He's helped me quite a few times when something like this, like my desert car, did the same kind of weird little thing. And I said, hey, this thing's not running. I'm loaded up. I would like to stop by there tomorrow, and just point me in the right direction. You ain't gonna do anything. He's like, yeah, no problem. I took off out of here. I went to bed, slept for a few hours. I took out of here at like noon on Monday.
Mm-hmm. What day was the race?
Sunday. So I mean, there were still days, but I wanted more days. I wanted test days. I wanted time.
When you're doing King of the Hammers, days isn't enough sometimes.
Well, no. And so I loaded it up, not running. I took off out of here about noon, 1 o'clock, and in 26 hours I was in Lake Havasu.
So what are you thinking when you're driving 26 hours?
Nothing.
And you're back there, and because I know sometimes I'll make an adjustment on my machine, and I'm like, I test it kinda, and I get there and I'm like, man, I just hope this thing runs. But you're pulling a machine has an issue. What's going through your head?
I just keeping that. DC Shoes had a thing years ago that Travis pushed out. It was called Refuse to Lose.
Refuse to lose.
And that was, since I heard that, I've just always kept that in the back of my head. It's not something I go out and preach to everyone.
Right.
But when things get hard, you just refuse to lose. You do whatever it takes to make it work.
I like that.
And so I just took off driving. And I drove nonstop until I got to Lake Havasu.
Yeah.
I got to my buddy's house, which is the editor for a magazine. Mm-hmm. And I slept at his house. Then I went down to Mark Queen's shop, right down the road. And I told him what's going on. He's like, all right, well, unload it. Let me pull the codes off of it. And so I unloaded it. He pulled the codes, and he does a lot of ECU tuning, a lot of dyno runs, a lot of motor work. Super, super sharp guy.
What's the name of your shop?
Queen Racing.
Out
in Lake Havasu. He's the go-to guy in the West.
Okay.
Like almost everybody that races best in the desert is running a flash from him.
Okay.
He's just super, super smart dude.
Okay.
Has insane amount of knowledge.
Yeah.
And knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
So I told him what it was doing. He's like, all right, unload it. He pulled the codes. He went and looked at it. And he pulled the codes up on his computer, looked it up. He's like, all right, try this, this, and this. 3 things.
Do you know what those 3 things were?
Well, he told me, he said, pull the fuel pump out and make sure the pump isn't leaking on the pressure line. So he pulled the fuel pump up out of the tank, turned on. Sure enough, it was leaking.
Really?
Because we made new tubes.
Right,
so extend it just a little bit. And use the factory style tubes. Heat it up. It all heat shrink just fine. Yeah. But it was leaking around that pressure line.
Yeah.
So he pulled it out, put a new pressure line on it, crimped it, got it good and tight, fixed that. And then it still wasn't running right. So he gets looking around in it. He's like, oh, see that plug? He said, swap these 2 plugs. And as soon as he said swap those plugs, I pictured my razor here where I was looking down at it. And I was like, that's what's wrong.
Yeah.
Sure enough, the 2 map sensors, I had them plugged backwards.
Oh, yeah?
So you got one sensor saying, I've got way too much air over here, calm down.
Yeah.
And the other sensor's like, I need more air. And they're plugged in backwards.
Yeah.
So it was literally that simple.
Wow.
It was just a amateur move.
Yeah.
Maybe 48 hours up straight.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But I got very lucky that it was only those couple little things.
Yeah.
If we didn't have fixed the fuel thing, it probably would have blew the motor up.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly so.
10 grand gone. It would have leaned it out. So, just being around the right people, doing the right things, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Got it fixed. He's like, all right. And we adjusted a few little things and changed like air intake routing and little things like that. He's like, all right. He said, go up there and run it in the desert, just up the road from his house. He said, because I'd rather you have a problem here and we fix it than you get out there and have a problem and you got to come back or whatever. So I went out and run it, probably about an hour, run it back and forth through the desert and beat on it, and it ran fine.
Before you did that first startup, when it worked right, because you had them backwards, when you
started as soon as I plugged them in, I knew it was going to run right.
So you started up and you're just like, yeah, this is it. Yeah. How's that feel?
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, that's how it should have felt when we were at the shop here.
Right.
But, whatever. We got it going good.
Yeah.
And, of course, Adam at Wide Open, he was texting me, texting me to keep up with it.
Right, like what's going on?
What can I do to help? He's behind me fully.
Yeah.
And, he was right there with me the entire time. Like, his guys built it. Mm-hmm. And, he's got a ton of stuff going on with the shop.
Right.
Between other builds and parts and all that kind of stuff. But he was right there in on top of it also. Mm-hmm. And he can, now that one's been built, it kind of knows where to go and knows, can kind of back up and just let it happen.
Yeah.
But it was right there with me the entire time. His guys were, everyone was behind it, no matter what. So we got it going good, and we run it some in the desert. It ran fine, so I went over to Hammers, went and got my little garage spot and set up, and I just slept in the trailer when I was out there.
Yeah.
I had like a little heater and a generator, and it's, as simple as it gets.
Yeah.
And we're going against like multi-million-dollar teams.
Yeah,
like
no
Factory
kidding.
Can-Am and Factory Polaris. And, these guys that are, big motor coaches and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm friends with most of them, and super good people. But it's just, this is more exposure than anything.
Yeah.
So we went out there running good. Went out and did some pre-running with some four-wheel parts guys. Yeah. And those fellas. And I run it a little bit by myself. And then once I met up with them, we got out there, and I wouldn't say like Hammertown has cell service when there's nobody there.
Yeah.
But when you stack 30, 50, 100,000 people in there ain't no more cell service.
100,000 people.
They done swamped it all out.
Yeah.
So it's hard pressed to even get a hold of anyone. I mean, two-way radio is the easiest way if you're all on the same channel. Uh-huh. So I met up with them. We went and pre-run up like Jack North and, up a few other spots. And that was the first time hitting it in the rocks.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I reached out to BCC Skids. They're down in Columbia, and he made me a custom skid plate for that. Yeah, because the chassis is longer.
You got to have something.
You can't just have
off the shelf.
You could take a 4-seat one and chop it down, I guess. Yeah. But we designed the bottom of the frame different and all that kind of stuff to kind of make it have better clearances to mimic the big buggies that work very well. Right. So they sent Adam and them sent CAD drawings to him. He scaled them out and he cut them out of the half-inch plate, bolted right on, no big deal. We just had to drill the holes. Yeah. And so that all worked out really great. And luckily we had that kind of stuff because you don't go out there without a good skid plate. No. A stock skid plate, I mean, it'll do it for a little while. It'll get trashed. It'll eventually be ripped off.
Yeah, I'm about to say, you'll see it in the rearview mirror for too long.
But I started going up and following those folks, and that was my first time really getting it up in the rocks. And a stock razor does well out there. If you'll put 32s on it, high clearance arms, stuff like that, it'll do well. I mean, the guy that won it the past 2 years, Mitch Guthrie Jr., that's a stock format razor.
Right, and he won this year on a Turbo S Velocity.
Turbo S Velocity, which is 72 inches wide from the factory.
Woo! Big boy.
It's great in the desert. Yeah. But in the rocks,
you got some width issues.
I mean, I would think so. Yeah. I mean, running a normal stock 64-inch razor with wheels, you're probably pushing about 66 inches or whatever, maybe a little bit wider. Right. You run into some issues where it's tight. And rolling on 72 to 75 inches wide, that's even tighter. Right. Now, I'm not saying it can't be done because the big Ultra 4 buggies do it.
But it's different.
But they're way bigger, way more clearance, way more power, way stronger.
And the wider you go, for those who, the width makes a difference because that's just more area for your arms to get caught up in. It's more area for you to hang in. That's just it. The one of the good things about 800s that Hubert mentioned to me before was that they were so small and narrow that they could kind of weasel their way through things, whereas, something like his buggy where it's wider, it's longer, basically all it is just a big billboard that says for a rock, hey, grab me, slow me down, and how hard can I hit, all the parts you have underneath here?
Yeah, so, I went with, as I said, I went and pre-run with a lot of 4-wheel parts guys, and these are rock sessions we ran last year. Mm-hmm. So I already knew the section roughly where we were going. Yeah. And I knew how rough it was. Mm-hmm. And it's more so you're just kind of wiggling over boulders and stuff like that, rough stuff, and you're just bottoming out everywhere. Right. Picking the best line where you bottom out the least. It's not crazy steep like it is here. Sure. And you got traction because it's dry. So it's just picking the best lines to get the smoothest route. Right. And I put that thing following them and following different lines, and it just went easier. Yeah. Like I could see their machines bottoming and kind of getting hung up where this machine wouldn't. Because I was a little nervous of it. I was like, all right, we've extended the wheelbase. Mm-hmm. So when you're extending the wheelbase, it should bottom a little bit quicker just because it's longer. Right. It didn't as much as what I thought. Sure. I mean, it still bottoms, of course.
How much longer were you? About a foot?
Roughly. Okay. Stock Razor's 90, and a Can-Am X3 is 103. So we're landing right there around Can-Am X3 range. Okay. So, and it all depends on, my arms are offset by forward and backward a little bit. So that changes things compared to stock geometries and whatever. So, we went through there and it seemed to go very well. It didn't bottom out as bad as theirs. It kind of crawled right through everything. Yeah. The one thing I will say for next year, we went and we raced, and Fox helped me with a little bit of spring issues and just trying to, because the whole machine is a little bit heavier. Yeah. So they made sure the spring rates were good, made sure the internals were good as far as what I was needing out of it, because it was acting kind of noisy, and a little bit of pre-running, and then the qualifying, they would top out real hard and they'd clack a lot, and I was like, well, this needs to be fixed. Right. And like, well, that's kind of just those shocks. And I was like, that's not the answer I want to hear. That's not right. Yeah. I was like, okay, maybe that's what they're known for us, but it doesn't mean it has to be like that. Correct. It's like, well, we have these different internal springs we can do to kind of stiffen it up, and it won't be so loud, and it'll kind of help the dampening. Because like you were saying, like, they can spring it for what it carries. Right. But when you add arms and wheels and tires, well, that's more weight that's carrying out. Correct. So you almost have to revalve the rebound side of it so it doesn't slap out so hard. Exactly. Because you've overweighted the valving on the rebound side of it. And that's getting in stuff that, like, the average person's never going to know. Never going to know about.
And even, the average person won't even run into that. If you're running your rig down a gravel road or riding a little trail ride, you're probably not going to have that issue. It's when you're really running it hard and everything's dialed in perfectly that becomes an issue.
Well, it's not necessarily, it's partially running it hard, but when you're running through, like, boulder sections or creek beds and you're kind of getting in at weird angles where a wheel's kicking off the ground. Right. Well, if you kick it off the ground slowly, you'll never hear it. Right. But if you're doing it rather quick, you'll hear the shocks slap out real hard. And that's because there's so much weight pulling it out, and the spring also, that you hear it. So they helped and got a better spring inside of it to where it wouldn't do that as bad, and therefore it helped the dampening all the way around. Yeah. And they stiffened the valve stack up a little bit because heavier car. Yeah. And so, we're set to go. And then, rolling out there, I didn't even have a co-driver.
Yeah. Yeah, nice.
Because I was supposed to have a co-driver, and he just couldn't leave his job. It was just too much money going, and that's fine. Sure. So while we were building it, Adam's buddy, Wes King, which we talked about earlier, which is a really, really good driver, really good
excellent rock
hill climber guy type whatever, he was already going out there to do the hill climb shootout. Yeah. And he said, hey, man, I'm coming out there, I'll co-drive with you. And I'm thinking, okay. And Adam told me, he was a really good guy. He's, very good as far as the rock crawling. He'll be great when, those situations to know how to get you through it. I was like, well, perfect. So he hopped in with me basically right after qualifying. We rode through the desert for like 20 minutes. Yeah. Just to feel the shocks out and whatever. And I was like, all right, that's all. We're going racing tomorrow.
Nice.
And I showed him how to use the iPad as far as the lead nav stuff, and I was like, you won't have to do much, just this, and this. And I was like, I just need to know, like, whether it's a fast turn, a medium turn, or a sharp turn. I said, I need to know that, and I need to know, so far out, just so I don't even have to think about that, whatever. And I said, I can't know too many turns out because I'll forget.
Right.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
And so we took off the next morning. We didn't qualify worth a crap. We qualified 89th out of 100.
89th out of 100. So I actually checked. I checked after qualifying to see where you were, and I saw. And how the machine was running good. Everything was good.
The machine ran good. The thing is, I had 0 laps. On the qualifying course.
Sure, and
I didn't go
very
out
little
there.
Seat time, honestly.
Well, the seat time was one thing, but I didn't know the qualifying course. I didn't even see it.
Yeah.
Until I left the starting line.
Wow, that's
because I was dealing with Fox and trying to get these shocks right.
Right.
So I went out and qualified, and we went around the mountain up and over, and I was like, all right, cool. And I never even saw the time until later that evening. I saw it, and I was like, well, that's not very good. They did say they had a timing issue, like the timer didn't start until I had already left. And whatever, and they added some time to kind of equal it out. And I was like, all right, man, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right. Because King of Hammers is corrected time. So it's not necessarily who leaves the gate first. It's all about who leaves. At the end of the day, it took you X amount of hours to complete the track. And it's compared against everybody that way.
Yeah, it's all racing the clock.
Correct.
So, people can be in your way, and they're not really in your way, but they are slowing your time down.
Correct.
So, I left out, and then I saw a video later on, like, there was a shortcut line that I missed in the qualifying course that would have cut off like 4 seconds.
That's a lot of time.
And I just didn't know it was there.
Right.
And I just raced what I saw. And, that's my fault for being, lack of prepared and whatever. And, it was just making the very best of the situation.
Sure.
So we got out the next day, and he's, Wes is getting ready, and we're lining up, getting ready to leave, and we take off across the desert, and about 10 miles in, blew a belt.
Woo!
I'm thinking there's something wrong because I don't blow belts.
Right.
I went across country and didn't blow a belt. I've got belts of 7,000 miles on them.
Right.
I raced the whole Best in the Desert series on 2 belts.
Ooh, what happened?
And
just a fluke?
I don't know. Well, no, we don't have time to go evaluate what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. Right.
So we hop out. Thankful for Wes. He had the belt chain. We blew 4 belts that day.
4 belts?
Yeah.
How many belts you bring with you?
I brought about 8.
Oh, good.
we carried 2 spare belts in the razor no matter what.
Right.
When we pulled in the pit, we'd grab another spare.
Okay.
And we took off, and he was good. He could change a belt in under 5 minutes.
That's crazy.
Like, I have the cover with quick pins to pull the cover off. He wouldn't even use the tools. He would just throw it on there and rip it and grab it and turn it.
Ooh, strong man.
No other. And I'm like, man, there's still marks of his gloves melted on my muffler to where he was holding it while he was pulling on it.
Oh,
I'm like,
gosh, man.
Dude was a beast. But we got to pit 1. We took on some fuel and got a spare belt. And we got very fortunate, being buddies with a lot of Polaris guys.
Yeah.
Jagged X had told me the day before, if you need help, we'll help you. Wes had a buddy there that was like our main pit guy. But he sent fuel back with the other guys just in case we beat him to the pit. That way we always had, stuff waiting for us. We took off, and, we're talking back and forth through the helmets, and he's, just being the adventure side. We come over the mountains. I was like, this is a race. I was like, but this is pretty awesome scenery that don't many people see unless you're actually racing it. He's like, yeah, man, it is pretty cool. And, I'm not going incredibly fast, just cruising along.
Yeah.
And we're just passing people. Every 5 minutes we pass another car, bro.
Yeah.
And I told him early on, I was like, I'm not going to be the fastest out there. I said, I'll go ahead and tell you. I was like, but it's all about lasting till the end.
It's about finishing. King of Hammers is a race that you win by finishing.
We went past pit 1. We got all the way back around to pit 1 again because it's a loop. And we're coming back into pit 1. He's, man, you're right. He's like, it's like a graveyard out here.
Yeah.
There's just broken cars everywhere.
Wow.
And I was like, exactly. I was like, we just got to finish.
Yeah.
And I was like, if you want to finish up top, there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
You got to be fast.
Yeah.
And keep it together.
Right.
But, we trucked right along. We did all, lap 1 went just fine. We got going into lap 2 through all the rocks. And we got up in the rocks, and we passed some big name people.
Yeah.
Like, we passed Robbie Gordon.
Ooh.
We got in a rock section. It was a left or a right,
yeah.
and it was a split, and it came to the same spot. So I picked right because I knew it was to the left. There was a ledge in there that would traffic jam back, and it was already traffic jam like 6 cars back.
Yeah.
And you could see that coming into it. So I looked to the right, and there was a couple cars, but it was kind of scattered. Mm-hmm. So he got up in there. He was having a hard time, mostly because of his width. Mm-hmm. I mean, that Textron he's driving was like 78 inches wide.
Yeah.
And that just doesn't work the best in the rocks. Now, maybe in the desert he might be good, but he looked like a fish out of water. Man. And so he kind of backed up and he was taking another line. We walked right around him, like never spun a tire, and never checked up. Just kept rolling. Yeah. Rolled right past him. Rolled past like 4 people right in a row right there. Did a little hill climb, passed some other people. Got just over the hill. There's Robbie's other car. Yeah. It's sitting there bottomed out on top of 2 rocks, stuck and broke. So we passed all them.
Crazy.
Got going. We passed some of the Monster Energy stuff, and we missed a turn somewhere at the bottom of Chocolate Thunder because it was going down it that year. Mm-hmm. And we missed a turn back on the course. And we kept riding, and I seen the barrier, and we rode all the way around this damn sand mountain and come back in on the course. Yeah. So we didn't advantage no time whatsoever. Right, yeah. We finally get back on the course, get right, and that's partially my navigator. Like, I need to know where to turn here. Yeah. You know? Yeah. And he's like, oh, well, the line's over there. And I'm like, we'll figure it out. Yeah. Just whatever. Yeah. So we get back up in the rocks. We make another great pass on like 5 people in a row. They're sitting in a row waiting on the main line. Right. We drive right next to them, beside them, up the rougher line. Yeah. Snake in between them and keep moving.
There you go.
Like no big deal.
Yeah, that's how you race.
And I mean that chassis and the whole Wide Open Design chassis product, like it just worked great. It's built for that kind of stuff. Yeah. And it handled the desert very well because it was that wheelbase extension. Yeah. I mean, it would take as fast as I wanted to go, and we had to back off because of the belt issue. Mm-hmm. And it turned out it was a vent tube going down to the belt. Mm-hmm. It was collapsing on itself. Mm. I told the guys at the pit to turn the intake, and when it did, it creased it. Yeah. And we never could get that back out, so it was never cycling the air as it should. Yeah. So that was just a silly issue, whatever. Sure. But we get all the way around to the last pit, and we got fuel, and then we went towards Outer Limits, which is the last rock climb of the course, and it's crazy rough.
It's a rough Outer Limits.
It's
crazy.
Silly rough. Yeah. And
a lot of winching.
I pre-run it all last year, and I went into it, and I knew where to go, and we were cruising along, well, we blew a belt again, like right before it. Well, then, it was getting hot, so we just pulled the cover off and just threw it in the floorboard. Yeah. Like, let it breathe. Well, it had got so hot that it actually locked the clutch up, like the bearing in the center. Oh, wow. And so the clutch didn't want to work real good. So we were battling that through the rocks. And then we broke the winch line.
And that's the one place you don't want to battle a clutch is when you're sitting in the rock section.
No, and there was someone broke in the main line, which was easier. So we were against like a 3-foot wall trying to winch up it. Woo! Broke the winch rope. Oh! And the clutch wasn't wanting to pull, and it wasn't wanting to shift because it was stuck in gear. Right. I almost broke the shifter cable out of it. So, everything happened in a 10-foot section, went bad. We come into Outer Limits with 2.5 hours left to finish. Yeah. And it's like, all right, let's say hour and a half up, maybe an hour out, we'll be right there at the time limit. He was basically I was like a puppy on a string. Yeah. He just kept the winch line out and just kept hooking to different things. And we used the winch to pull us on through. Right. And Mitch Guthrie, that won it, didn't pull the winch one time.
That is a testament to a good driver.
Well, it's a good driver, it's a good co-driver, and it's a lot of research and homework.
I guess. Yeah.
They knew where to go. Yeah. And they knew that these rocks will be moved by the time we get here. This is, pivot on these things. Ooh. And, I watched a video of him going through Outer Limits. Yeah. He wasn't fast. But he was always moving. Yeah. And he just knew where to put his tires. Yeah. And his co-driver knew exactly where to go. It was the excellent combination.
That's wild.
King of the Hammers is one race where the co-driver can literally make or break your race.
Absolutely.
In the rock sections, because they know where to go, know where not to go.
They can see where you can't as well.
Yeah. So, we got through all that. We stopped through the last pit, grabbed a spare belt just in case, and we went down Spooners. And there was a big thing at the bottom of, there's a bypass. The bypass is like a whole half of a canyon. Yeah. If you take this, you will be DQ'd. Yeah. And we started heading down there. I took a line wrong, tipped on our side. That put us down like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But at that time, like Jagged X had just come by us right before that.
Yeah.
Sarah Price, which qualified 7th.
Right.
She had just come up on us when we were flipping back over.
Right.
And there was someone else that had been doing really good, that qualified really good. Like all these people that were passing me had qualified in the top,
like way ahead
top
of you.
15.
Right, yeah.
And at that point, I was like, you know what? It's all right.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
I was like, because for this long, I've been beating the top 10.
People who started.
I've been beating the top 10 people up until now.
And that's for perspective, that's over 70 positions, 70 racers, 70 units ahead.
We had worked our way up, like as far as our finishing across the line.
Yeah.
Maybe, better.
Yeah.
But we were beating people that qualified way better than us.
That's amazing.
And we didn't have a flat tire. The worst thing we had was...
Whose tires do you run?
We run them System 3 tires.
System 3, shout out to System 3.
The System 3 tires, that XCR rock crawler tire they have, it's kind of a softer compound.
Yeah.
A very good tire.
Do you run tire balls?
You're not allowed to in Ultra 4.
Ooh.
So they put a ban against tire balls, tire blocks, any kind of run flat system. Yeah. Because they said it took away from the racing. They said it made the racing.
I get it. That's fine.
They said it made the racing unsafe.
I don't. Is that the high speed element, or what do you think?
Maybe the element of a driver takes less care.
You can just run it
because they know it'll be fine, and they'll just blow through everything. And if there's a crowd nearby,
right? That's true.
So I don't know. I think it's kind of silly, but whatever. You just abide by whatever.
Yeah, I agree. That's
fine. So we got rolled back over, and the rest of the race, I was just happy. Yeah. Because I was like, you know what, we were beating people that were qualifying
the big names
way better than us, and had way more aspect of doing better than us.
Absolutely.
Like, they should have done. They were hyped up to do way better right out of the gate. Yeah. And we were beating them. Yeah. And so they had problems. We didn't. That was the day. That's how it worked out. Yeah. And so we got tipped back over. We got all the way out to the desert. We cruised across the desert. And the last section, about 30 miles of desert, we're cruising across, and you look to the left, and you can see Hammertown over there. Yeah. But they make us go straight all the way around the backside of the mountain and come back in. And I tell you, going across there, it's hard not to just veer left and go straight towards the lights. But we followed our path. We went all the way to the end, and we finished an hour outside of the time frame. Yeah. Now, if we wouldn't have had the tip over, that would have been a lot closer. Right. If we would have had less problems in the rocks, we probably could have finished right there in the top whatever for the time frame. Yeah. So we weren't far out. And considering the year before, I got cut off at 3 o'clock, or basically 3:30, or I cut myself out basically. Right. So knowing that we went from like barely finishing half the course to finishing barely outside the time frame, it felt pretty awesome. Now when we go back and look at some of the results, there's people I passed in the rocks that finished in front of me, but they never passed me. Yeah. So there's some weird stuff going on as far as the tracking and stuff.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because I've never seen them in the rock section that I had a hard time in.
Yeah, that's wild.
But they finished in front of me. So how does that work? Well, they probably just bypassed.
Hey, Ultra 4, you got some things to look into there.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Right. It's all fun.
We were outside of the time frame. Yeah. But we finished, I think, 35th out of 120.
So, for those who don't have a full understanding of King of Hammers...
And only 40 finished, or 43 finished in total.
So, 40 rigs finished. Go look at a video, go watch the YouTube, whatever. Figure out a way to understand what King of Hammers is. To finish is an excellent accomplishment. It's incredible. So, congratulations for finishing, first and foremost.
It felt great to finish. Yeah. And it felt great to finish in that buggy that had, little to no issues outside of something silly. Right. So, that was a good taking in itself. We rolled up through the finish line. Dave Cole, the guy that puts on the race, he come out and said congratulations, and I talked to him for a minute. He said, "Oh, Hubert. Yeah. Hey, how are you?" Because he had called me like the week before and made sure I was coming and whatever. And so you pull around, you pull up on stage, and they usually do an interview. Right. They had the Super Bowl on.
Worst.
I didn't even know there was a Super Bowl going on.
Wow.
I didn't know who was playing. I didn't know where it was at. Pulled up on the Super Bowl, no interview, and they're like, "Why don't you get out of the way so we can watch a game?"
Wow.
And so we got like 1 or 2 pictures from a local friend.
Yeah.
And whatever, I guess that's our fault for being late. But but we finished, and at the end, there's a lot of times going through your head, it's like, man, this is stupid. Like, why am I out here? This is ignorant. I'm not doing this no more. And then about a day later, you want to do it again. Right. Because you know what to change, you know what to do better.
Yeah. You know how to be better.
You know what to look into. And so, we'll see for next year. Yeah. Definitely this razor crawler has I think it has a little bit of an advantage. Yeah. Just it's tough and things you don't have to worry about, and you know it's going to last. And as long as you put good parts on it, it's going to last. Yeah. So I think it's pretty good. But yeah, there's a lot of people going around, at least you finish. And yeah, as far as King of the Hammers go, that's a big deal. Mm-hmm. Finishing in itself is a big deal. Right. But I come from Travis and Nitro Circus, and finishing is you finished. Finishing is expected. Right. It's not like a big deal. Like you need to be finishing top 5. Right. So am I ever a top 5 runner? I have no clue. Probably not. Yeah. But we never know. I think if we do it again, we can finish within the time frame. There you go. Because we know what to expect. We know how to build something. Yeah. One step closer. Yeah. So if we go next year, that's year 3. Yeah. And finish within the time frame. That's a pretty good goal. And then that's pretty good. You try to keep upping it, but at the same time, you kind of look at it like, man, is it really worth it? What people listening may or may not understand is King of Hammers is an awesome race. But it's extremely expensive. Yeah. And racing in general is expensive, but the entry fee alone is, for UTV class, entry fee is $1,500. That's a lot. And then that's just entry fee. Yeah. That's not. If you want a garage space, a garage space is a fee, and it's all part of the event. It's just how it is, whatever. And I'm not complaining. That just is what it is. But at the same time, then all your expenses as far as gas, food, hotel, whatever, we're pushing to drive across country. You're pushing $1,000 each way in fuel. It's a lot. So there's $3,500 right there. Before you've even started your razor. Yeah. Before you've even done anything. And then you got your parts you need, your spares, it just adds up. Yeah. Someone doing it cheap, you're into it $5,000. Right. It's just part of it. And I'm not complaining, it's just that's an aspect that people don't see. Yeah. And I hear people around here complain about racing locally, and their entry fee here is $200. Right. So I'm like, oh, okay. Must be nice. I was like, I blew 4 belts, and they're $200 a piece. Yeah, that's an easy belt too. That's a cheap one. Yeah. So we're not complaining. Yeah. It's just there is an aspect behind it. Yeah. Is it truly worth it? Sure, certainly. So I got to say, we did over 3 hours. We did over 3 hours. Well, I don't think we're going to use it all. No, so we're going to use it all. Wow. Everything's going to go in. So I'm going to split it up. But so where can people find you on social media? So I have Facebook. And I have Instagram. They're both Nitro. Yep. And then Rednek, Rednek, and Hubert, Hubert. So those are Facebook and Instagram. That's what I use. I don't have anything else besides that. Okay. People ask about my adventures and rides and stuff like that, and the power sports safety. If I'm doing something and I want the public involved, it'll be on there. Okay. Follow it on Instagram, Facebook. If I don't want to make it publicly known, it won't be on there. It's literally that simple. Okay. And I invite everybody to come riding whenever I go ride. That's fine, especially if it's at a public place. Now, at my house, not so much. We don't show up. We don't need hundreds of people here. There you go. All right. Well, Hubert, thanks for meeting with me. Hubert Rowland, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, thank y'all so much. Really appreciate it. All right, my man. Have a good one. Yep.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. I just want to say again, check out our Instagram, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is. Make sure you guys are liked, subscribed. That helps us bring you guys better content, and it just gets better. The audio gets better, the video gets better, everything will get better. Just like, subscribe, share it with your friends. If you think somebody would like to hear what we have to say or like to hear somebody talk, tag them, send it to them. Let's get this big as possible. And I want to say thanks again for listening.